Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Hello, David, and everybody who's going to listen to us and see us. This is exciting. I know I don't have the same pizzazz that David Gorski has when he signs on. He's a lot more vibrant at his beginning, but I'm really looking forward to this session together. Um, it's a very eventful um, a podcast. I feel there's so much that's happening. There's market has been doing its own little shift around, and with all of these new non-regulations that they're going to put in place for COVID, I think this will be a very exciting session because it's going to affect a lot. I mean, not just our personal lives, but real estate in general.
Well, yeah, I agree with you 100%, Sabiha, but this is a special podcast just because you're on it. And as much as I love doing it with David, and David is the title on this, we're really happy that you're on it. David wasn't available today, and we've sort of agreed that anytime one of us isn't going to be available, we're going to have somebody else co-hosting it. And you're a fabulous person to have on with all your knowledge and enthusiasm, and you're way more fun than David is anyways. Like, let's be honest about it. So I've been looking forward to this today, and I'm sure when I'm away and he has somebody else subbing for me, he'll say the same thing. It's, oh yeah, David's okay, but I'm really glad I got somebody else in here to talk to. So
It's a
welcome,
different
Sabiha.
perspective for sure. We run the brokerage together, and we've been kind of working together for the last 10 years on multiple projects. But it's really funny how we both have a completely different perspective on things and topics. And I think it's great because then it makes us aware of basically, both sides of the border, if it may be called that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really important. David and I have talked about it, certainly privately, maybe a little bit on the podcast too. Like, he's got you to bounce things off. And I know there's nothing that goes on at Sutton Summit without you knowing about it and him bouncing ideas off you and you bouncing ideas off him. And it's great to have a different perspective. And I do the same thing at our law firm. Like, I've got
mhm.
Jonathan Hakon as my partner, and he's been on the podcast and he'll be on more in the future too. And we come at things from a different place sometimes, and it's great. He's got an idea, he bounces it off me, and vice versa, because we have different perspectives. And sometimes we get all hot about a certain thing, and sometimes we just got to cool off a little bit and take a deep
Yeah.
breath. And sometimes we just have to remind each other to do that. And but he's more tech savvy than I am. He's a different generation than I am. His input is so huge into what we do. And then I've got a different perspective, and I can, that I bring my experience to the table too. And when he has an idea, and I say, okay, but have you thought about this, or what about this? It's great to have somebody else to bang your head with a little bit till you come up with the right plan. And you and David are a fabulous team, and I think it's because of the combination of the two of you that you've elevated what's been going on at Sutton Summit over the last few years.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like if your energy level is the same and your, ambition level is the same, and you know exactly what the drive is, that's what's important. That's something that you should share, right? But to facilitate each other, having different perspective only makes you certain that, you're going to be able to achieve the goal in a very all-rounded way, especially in the business we both are, right? And I always think that it's the realtors that would be most interested in this podcast. We're in such a people's business. It's very, very easy to just sit in one place and look at a thing from one perspective, and not be able to cover up the issues that may come up, even working with clients, right? You're working with a client, the client's perspective is completely different. It's so great to have someone on your side, saying maybe, we can think about it in a different manner, and sort of have a different view on it. I know you guys always talk about the market. I've seen a huge change in the last 1 week. Maybe you can put some light on it as to what you think might have been happening. For the last 2 years, with COVID being a deciding factor for the market, it took away a lot of hype from downtown core, from high-rise buildings, and it placed a lot of it, the weight transferred off to suburban, larger homes, homes that could have swimming pools and hot tubs, and people were really accepting this fact that they're not going to travel a lot, or they'll not be able to go on vacations. They, I think, had a lot of money to spare because of that, and they were getting into larger homes away from the city. In the last 3 weeks, sort of, I've seen the trend change very much. And the listings that are coming to the brokerage, the ones that are in suburbs, they're slowing down. There's no activity, if any, maybe one or two offers on multiple offer days, and all the pressure is on condominiums. Yesterday, I was working with 3 different realtors in the evening with 3 different properties that they had listed. 2 were suburban homes. One was a condominium in actually Mississauga, and they did not even have could not even wait for the offer presentation date. There were preemptive offers and a lot of pressure from the other realtors, and they sold the property before the offer presentation date on a much higher value than they thought they would, whereas the other 2 properties had no offers at all. So it's really like, I always say our market is such a seesaw, right?
Right.
There's always people have to buy. There we have a lack of inventory for sure. I was reading an Oria article the other day which said one we have a lack of 1.5 million properties are required in the GTA, which we don't have right now. But it always either you're very heavy on the condo market or you're very heavy on the residential market in
Yeah.
suburbia.
Well, some of the shift to the condo market, I think, is happening because there's no supply in the suburban market. Like there's just no
Right.
houses out there. And those that are there are so unaffordable for a lot of people right now. So even though the people had a certain plan, maybe a couple of years ago, that they would be, getting into that market and finding their nice house in suburbia, and maybe that was their plan, but right now they can't find one. And the ones they do find, they can't afford because they're being bid up. So that forces some of them back to the condo market. Now, and then what's interesting in the condo market, like for years, the condo construction, especially in the core, in the downtown areas, and even like, downtown Mississauga areas, when the big condos first started going up on Burnham Thorpe and everything, they were all small units, like bachelors and 1 bedrooms and the odd 2 bedroom, but you couldn't find 3 bedroom condos anywhere. You couldn't find big units with a lot of space. So those are an absolute premium right now, because that's what a lot of people would like to buy, because you had a whole market of young people buying their first property, and a lot of them were getting into the small condos, the bachelors and the 1 bedrooms and everything. Then all of a sudden they get married, and then they start having a family. Maybe for one kid they got room. By the time they have the second kid, they got no room. So their plan was probably, okay, let's get into a semi or a townhouse or a detached. And right now they can't find those. So they've got to stay in condo life, but they need a bigger condo. And there aren't a lot of big condos out there. There aren't a lot of 3 bedroom condos that you can find. So that drives the price of that up. But builders now are starting to build more of that type of unit, because that's what people are going to be looking for. But I think the market was misread at some point, and everybody thought, like all the builders thought, everybody, let's just build a whole bunch of small units, and thought, okay, when the people that are in them now are going to leave, there'll be the next generation that'll move in, and that'll continue. But all of a sudden, the generation that's in there right now has nowhere to go.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also the next generation. Like my nieces and my nephews are in that phase where they are having kids. Their millennials are not interested in staying home and gardening. They want to travel. They want to eat out. They work too many hours to take care of anything like that. So it's most convenient. I mean, I keep saying, like, and I've been saying in the last 26 years that I've been here in the city, I keep seeing an extreme trend change. It is so different from what Toronto is so different from what I came to 26 years ago. There's such great restaurants, and it's the life is, it was a very quiet city at that time, right? And it's really changing its trend, and it's really changing its demographic.
Right.
There's so many young individuals from across the world. It's so global. You have so many people from Hong Kong and Singapore and all over the world, and these young professionals have gone to universities here. UFT has been a big hub, and it's now Kitchen Waterloo and so on and so forth, and this brought in so many of these young people, youths, into the city, and it's really changed the trend. And all they want to do is dress well, eat well,
Yeah.
travel. And I don't think they're really into. I mean, they live really well. They're very stylish, but I don't think they're into big homes. And like I think I was like, that feeling of wanted expanse, and I wanted trees, and I wanted a garden. I don't think they're very much into that
No,
anymore.
right. And once they get a taste of that downtown lifestyle and that condo
Hmm.
lifestyle where you can walk out the door and walk to a restaurant, or just hop in an Uber to go to a
Uber.
restaurant or to a bar or a nightclub, and you don't need a car, and you could, because these are short trips, it's not that expensive, and you don't worry about drinking and driving, because it's a great lifestyle. And once they get used to that, they would like that to continue, and it would, except those that get married, they're still okay with it. And then once they start having a kid, all of a sudden it starts to change, because they see the priority is the kid. Now I got to take my child to a park. Where is there a park? Is
Mm,
there any outdoor space? Where's the schools? Where's the activities? It changes their needs, and all of a sudden they get all the kids' toys and all the, their diapers and everything else starts piling up in the house, and in the condo rather, and all of a sudden they start being squeezed for space. So
that's true.
they have to look for something bigger, and
Mm,
there isn't always something bigger available in the condo market. So they're the ones that would normally push back to go into the city, and okay, let's get a townhouse, let's get a semi in the city. But those semis in the heart of the city, the 20-foot lots, like they're a million two right now, and
I
more. Like
know.
it's
Yes. Yes.
so, go jump out of a condo from $500,000, and now you're going to pay a million two to get into a semi. Like that's not so
Mm.
easy.
My One of my nephews, he works in Bloomberg, and his wife is a lawyer in New York City. And when they had their firstborn, they were actually there was a struggle to get into. There was two buildings, and the reason was that they had the best daycares within the building. And now recently, now my niece has just gotten married, and they're actually, I did not realize that Toronto even had something like that. And I just recently found out that, she came to me and she said, "Can you find us a place in that particular building? Because the daycare in that is really good, because now they're planning a family." It's
Right.
really, it's very interesting to see
Right.
how, yeah, those things
And
are
some of
attracting
those
factor
daycares
too.
like that have waiting lists. They can't get in,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
So
They
they
might
don't
be able to
they
get, they
don't
might
even
find a
have a
place in the
baby yet.
building, but they can't get into the daycare. So they
Yeah.
choose to go somewhere else where they can both get into the building and get into a daycare.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
as an agent, like that's, when you get, you find out, you know your client, and you go through all that, and you find out that something like that is priority number one. Like they'll
Hmm.
put up with a lot of stuff in a building that they don't like, as long as there's
Yeah.
proximity to a
That
daycare or
facility,
ability to get
because they
in.
need to just drop the kid, know that the baby's gonna be okay, and they're not coming home till like 7 o'clock.
Right.
I wanted to touch on something else. So yesterday I had a really interesting within the brokerage webinar with Ray Zammit, who is our partner for home inspections.
Yep.
And a few things came up, and
And
it
Ray was
was,
on one of our podcasts about a month ago.
oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Fabulous. So anybody
So, and
that
I
wants
have
to look it up, you can see a whole hour of Ray Zammit, a
Ray.
home
Yes,
inspector.
yes. An absolutely great guy, and I've
Great
always,
guy.
had him on my side when I'm putting a deal together for my buyer clients. Um, and now more and more I'm doing that for sellers as well, because it's great to do a pre-inspection, prior to. I have a little funny story because I had a listing in downtown Toronto. It was a loft condominium at 5 Hannah. This was just a few weeks ago, and when I received the buyer's lawyer's information, it was no other than Jonathan. And this came up where we had an issue where there was no inspection, there was no financing clause in the offer. It was a completely clean offer. Um, I did not hold back offers, but within 3 days that I had the first offer, that by that evening I was able to call up all the realtors and get another two or three offers on that deal. So it was competitive, and by 12, I think I was working till 12:30 at night, and we settled this up. Then I get the buyer's lawyers, Jonathan, and I always like to have Jonathan on my side rather than the opposing side.
Yep.
And but he was on the opposing side at this point because my client had his own. Um, and this came up where the clause of you know um, chattels and fixtures being in good working order, right?
Right.
And I wanted to just touch on it because I know a lot of my realtors don't understand the value of this clause, whether they're representing buyers or they're representing sellers. Um, and there were some things that were not working in the unit. Because it was a rented out unit before, and then the new purchaser was actually moving in, and they pointed it out, and they had to do a holdback of funds because of this clause. And a lot of people think, oh, there was no inspection, so it's as is, right?
Right.
So if you could put some light on this, because
Yep.
I really.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because the basic principle is when someone buys a property is they buy what they see in the condition that they see it in. So if everything is in working condition, let's say, at the time they sign the agreement of purchase and sale, then on closing, it's supposed to be in the same condition. Okay, because it's during that interval between the time they sign the agreement and the time they close, everything's supposed to be in the same condition. So on the other hand, if something wasn't working when they signed the agreement, then it still doesn't have to be working at the time of closing. Let's say the stove wasn't working at the time they signed the agreement. But it's not working at the time of closing. So if there's evidence that it's in the same condition, and there was no clause about good working condition in the agreement, then they wouldn't really have an obligation to fix the stove, because if anybody checked the stove before they signed the agreement, they would have seen it's not working, still not working at time of closing. They're getting exactly what they bargained for. Okay.
Mm,
Now, if there was a clause that said, that all the chattels and fixtures will be in good working condition time of closing. So if that stove was broken time they signed the agreement and it's not working at time of closing, the seller has an obligation to fix it, because he's agreed that it'll be in good working condition at the time of closing. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect or it's going to be brand new. It has to be in working condition. It depends what that language says. Sometimes it's working condition, sometimes it's good working condition. There's case law on how that can be interpreted, but it has to be working. So if it wasn't working at all at the time the agreement was signed, the seller has an obligation to make sure that it's working the way that a normal stove would be working. Okay. So, I'm just using stove as an example. So whatever that is. But if you have a clause like that in there, and the seller says, I'm agreeing that on closing, all the chattels and fixtures shall be in working condition or good working condition, then they've got an obligation to do that. Okay. And if they knew the stove wasn't working at the time they signed it, then they should be excluding that. They should say, except for the stove, because we're going to give you the stove, but it's not working right now. You're going to get it still not working. You want to get it fixed, that's up to you, buyer, but we're not fixing it. If it doesn't say that, then there is an obligation on the seller to do it. So, there's a difference between buying something and the appliance is as is, where is, with no representation or warranty as to the fitness of the chattels. If there's a clause like that, that the buyer's just buying things the way they
No,
are,
as is, then it's as is. Yes, absolutely.
that's it.
But most agreement of purchase and sales agreements say, shackles and fixtures in good all, and it doesn't say the seven. It says all shackles and fixtures, and
Right,
that is anything, right? Fans and this and that and that. So
right,
it's good for people to know that this can come up
right.
and
So
on the
as a
day of
buyer's
closing. And
agent, you want to try and get that clause in there,
mm,
especially when you don't have an inspection.
yeah, and the seller's agent on the flip side should be aware that this can come up, so you should advise your clients that get this done prior to, because if on the last day they have two showings, right? And I always keep it like a PDI in a pre-construction, which is right the day before closing, to go in
Yeah,
and to make sure everything is there. I've had this issue where I always put in air conditioning and all HVAC components. And I purchased a property for myself. I went in the day before, and the air conditioning wasn't there because it was a brand new unit. The builder hadn't given the air conditioning, but I put it in my agreement of purchase and sale. Um, and I called up Jonathan and I said, "This has happened. This was about, I think, 6 years ago." And I was told by your firm, David, that hold back. How much money do you need? Do you want us to ask them to put it in? Or I said, "No, it's the last day. I cannot trust them with this." So
right.
I was asked what it would cost, and I got a quote on it, and that money was held back from the purchase price. I was able to get the air conditioning in.
Because, and whose obligation was it to fix it? Like, was the seller going to fix it, or was the
So
buyer going
yeah,
to
so
fix
I
it and
was
use the
buying.
holdback money?
Well, the five Hannah that I just did,
Yeah,
where I
like
listed the
when there's a
property.
holdback, the holdback
Yeah,
is going to be used to ensure that it
because
gets
the
fixed.
seller was going to fix it, and then they were able to check that it's working properly, and then that money was actually being held in this seller's um, a lawyer trust account. So it was safe with the seller's lawyer, but then
Mhm.
once it was fixed, the money would have been released.
Yeah. Well, and I talk about holdbacks all the time because some people just assume that it's part of the process, that if there's an issue that comes up like that, then, oh, we'll just hold back money from the closing until it gets fixed. But there is no right in the agreement purchase and sale to hold back anything. That's not the
Mm,
way our system works. It's not built
mm,
with a holdback system. So we can only hold back if both sides agree to it. Right?
absolutely,
So it's
yes.
something that has to be negotiated through the agents or through the lawyers. But you can't just assume that, oh, if there's an issue, we'll just hold back money on closing. It doesn't
No,
really
it's not
work like
easy as
that.
that. No. Mm,
Right. And
mm,
I quite frankly, I'm always encouraging real estate agents and buyers and sellers when they deal with those situations to try and deal with it without a holdback, because holdbacks I find are really problematic. Because let's say we're holding back money and the seller says, okay, the seller will fix it after closing
mm,
by within so many days. Well, now we close, and now the seller needs access to the buyer's property to go in and fix it. And then
mm,
who's fixing it? Is the seller doing it himself, or is he bringing a
mm,
licensed guy to come in and do it properly? Because oftentimes the buyer's never happy with what the seller does afterwards, and then they're fighting over whether the holdback should be released or not, and whether it was done properly, and you get into those issues. So sometimes it makes more sense for the parties to just negotiate, okay, instead of a $500 holdback, we're just going to give a credit for $500 to the buyer, or maybe it'll be
right.
$400, and the buyer will
Mm,
just get it fixed after closing. Bring in your own guy. Buyers do it himself or bring in their own guy and be satisfied that it's being fixed properly, and forget about having the seller coming back after closing, because it creates a lot of problems. So I'm just trying to
for sure. Yeah.
encourage people not to go that route if we can avoid it, because holdback something just never seem to get released because no one's ever happy with the job that's done.
Done. Yeah.
Right? Seller
You're
wants to do it
100%
on
right.
the cheap and get get in and out and just get it fixed, and the buyer's not happy. And then it's a question of, well, seller got it fixed. He says, it's fixed, it's now working. Yeah, it's working, but it's not producing the right amount of heat that it should be. So it's blowing air, but it's not producing the right amount of
Mm,
heat. So is
mm,
that working condition or is that not working condition? And seller says release the holdback, buyer says no, I'm not happy, we need somebody else to come in and fix it better, right? So I like abatements and credits on closing and more than holdbacks, but either way, it's still something that has to be negotiated.
Right, for sure. So it's best to just be aware that this clause is in there and just make sure that things are done so that this doesn't even come up. And like you said,
Right.
good working order or whatever it may be, just kind of, nobody's asking for a brand new appliance just as long as it's working.
Right. So if
Um,
you're on the seller side and think you're selling as is, where is, and not providing any rep or warranty on the condition, make sure there isn't anything like a clause like that, and make sure it's specific. I'm doing a private offer. I was just sent it out to a client today for a private sale. It's an estate sale of a house, and they're doing it privately just because somebody that they know happens to want to buy it. And I avoid doing private deals and drafting agreements as much as possible, because I think everybody's better off to have an agent. So I'm always encouraging people, go get an agent. You'll make sure you're selling it for the right price and on the right terms, etc. Anyways, this one's not, but we're putting that type of language in, like specific clauses saying that, here's the list of chattels and fixtures we're leaving behind, but we're expressly putting in that we're providing no representation or warranty as to the fitness of those chattels and fixtures. And they're buying it as is, whereas nothing. We're not telling, we don't know if they're working or not working. Like it's, that's just the way it is. And our position is that the price is based on that. And some of them might be working, some not. But it's an old house. The chattels and fixtures are all old, and they might be working, they may not be working, but that's just the way it's being sold. We're making it clear
that's as is.
As is, whereas we're not giving them any, we're expressly saying there is no warranty or representation about the condition of these chattels and fixtures.
Right. I also, always have this question because, I mean, I know that there's so many deals that have happened with absolutely no condition for inspection. Does the purchaser have any recourse after the property has closed, if they find mold or they find, something that's big in the house? Is there any recourse at all?
Well, the answer is maybe. Okay, and that's the answer everybody likes to get. Maybe yes, maybe no, and it depends on what they find. So it depends on what type of defect they find. So any defect that they come across that they should have seen, or a reasonable person would have been able to see without doing any invasive measures, they're not going to get any coverage for that. Okay, because they're buying what they saw and everything. And if there was clearly some evidence that there was a flood at some point, or there was water damage at some point, they're not going to get any coverage for anything like that, because it's something that would have been apparent to anybody going in, not a professional inspector, but anybody looking at it. You as an agent would have seen it. A layman would have generally seen it. So you won't get any coverage for something like that. Where you might have an argument with a seller is if the seller did something to hide it, like they knew that there was a problem and they're just hiding it so anybody wouldn't see it. So, and then it's a question also, does it make the place unfit? Because that's sort of one of the tests too. If it makes it uninhabitable, like people have floods all the time and water damage and leaky roofs and things like that. Like that's normal usage. And as a homeowner, you're allowed to fix it. You fix it because you're living there. You're going to fix it, and you think you fix it good, usually. But so you might not know that it actually wasn't fixed good, or something else happened, and there's mold, or there's water damage, or rot, or something like that. But if you didn't know it as a seller and didn't do anything to hide it, you're not going to be responsible for that. But if you knew that there was certain damage, and instead of really fixing the problem, you just covered over it, so anybody that looked at the property wouldn't know until they tore down a wall that there's mold behind it, and there's evidence that the seller knew about it and hid it, and it makes the place unfit for habitation, then there's recourse against a seller for a defect like that.
Right. Interesting. I know everybody's talked about COVID to death, but now they've put away they're saying, we don't need any passports anymore. And soon, and they're doing away with all of that. That I think that's going to affect a lot of things
Yes.
going forward. I hope and I pray that they're able to keep everyone safe, but I think it was time in some which ways, because there a lot of European countries are deciding to do that. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of mixed feelings. Some people would be happy because they're able to go out and travel and do a lot of things that were not vaccinated. Some people I know that are worried about it. I have a few people in my life that have, illnesses that are kind of worried that, it's gonna maybe bring things back. Um, I think our market and our trends would change. Like I said earlier, like there were so many houses being sold, everybody was interested in a large house with a pool, and if there was no pool, they wanted a huge big backyard so that they could put it in there. I think all of those things are going to get affected. I know that swimming pool companies and hot tub companies were booking 4 to 5 years in advance.
Yep.
You know.
It's true. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a lawyer also, but he's got a good friend who I know of, but it's not my friend, but I know who he is, who's in the hot tub business and pool business, well known in the city. And he is completely sold out for 2022 in hot tubs. And he's one of the biggest suppliers that there is. So wherever he could get equipment from and hot tubs from, he's been getting them and ordering them. But he cannot possibly, and we're in February, we're in the middle of like February. He can't get anybody anymore. Like whatever he's got booked now is all he knows he's going to get for the next 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So he could, if you wanted a hot tub, you can't get one. He couldn't sell you. He could sell you one, but you're not going to get delivery for at least a year.
Mm.
Like, can you imagine like that's your business, that you're that booked and that's sold out?
Absolutely. I mean, and there's so many things, So my husband, he works for Wakefield Canada. They actually produce castor oil, the oil, the automobile oil.
Yeah.
And they have a disaster on hand because there's no boxes available for shipments.
Right.
He's in supply chain, and been having the
He's
toughest
stuck.
time in the last 2 years because, and every time I get a delivery from Amazon, he looks at it and he says, "This is why I'm not able to." I'm like, "What? Can't get face cleaning products anymore because you get upset
Yep.
on this." So there's been such a shift in our psychology and the way we live. Uber Eats and uh, you know uh, I mean, we just decided to hibernate and live comfortably in our homes. They've been art galleries are sending. So I always have a membership to a AGO. For years and years, I've had a annual renewal membership, but I've not been able to really go. Like the last one I went to see was Picasso Blue, which was good, like I think 6 months ago or something, where the city opened for a bit, then it shuts down, and then it reopens and shuts down. So
Right.
so they've been doing all kinds of dinners and pairings. Like AGO is doing a dinner and pairing that they send to your house to
Right.
cover up for it, right?
It's better than nothing, but it's not the same.
No,
Right.
it's definitely not the same, and we've been attending concerts online, and I remember Paris Opera had set up this link so you can actually attend an opera online. It's not like going to the Palais to see it, though,
Yeah.
nothing like that.
No, it's not the
Yeah.
same. Look, I look forward to, just going to a Leaf game.
Oh, for
You,
sure. Yeah.
like, and they're starting to open that up again. And I think it's going to be a limited attendance, but they're going to get up to 50% in the next a couple weeks for some of the games then. And they're hoping in March that they'll be back up to 100% capacity. But
Mm,
I miss that stuff. I can still watch the hockey games on TV, but and I enjoy that. But it's not the same as when you get down to a game live.
mm.
And it's not just watching the hockey live, but when you're in a building, you bump into people.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
every time you go to an
Social,
event
yeah.
like that, you bump into some people that and that's part of the fun of attending things live.
Of
You know,
course, absolutely.
when did you have you had a chance in the last couple of years to randomly bump into certain people? Like, you just don't get a chance to do
It's not
that.
happening. Yeah, yeah. I mean, in Toronto, I mean, I love downtown Toronto, and it was such a sad place, right? The restaurants were not open, businesses were suffering
Mhm.
tremendously. So it'd be nice to see the city back in action, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I had a
how do you like you're dealing with all the real estate agents there all the time, right?
yes.
And and some of them I assume are struggling to a certain degree right now because they want to sell, they want to get out there. The supply is really low, and they're trying to figure out, like, what do I do? How do I create a sale? How do I, like, what do you do in the middle of February? What are you telling them, the ones that aren't getting any transactions done right now?
So, so the key with that was there's a lot of buyers out there. There was just a huge lack of inventory, and so realtors are active working. It's just hard for them to actually, yesterday one of my realtors told me in Cambridge there was 80 offers on a property that they wanted. 80 offers. Like that's
Wow.
absolutely, you almost feel like, and this is, where the trend was, one of my realtors, I told you she had a listing, she didn't get any offers at all. And it was in Erindale, it was a townhouse. And I think what has happened is all of this extreme hype and these extreme bidding wars have almost made buyers and buyer realtors tired.
Right, there's a
They don't want to
fatigue
play this
factor.
game. There is a
Yeah.
fatigue factor. They don't want to play these games. They don't. And I have honestly always done this for myself and my clients is you list properly, you list at as close to the price that you want, which is, reasonable market value. And you don't have a very prolonged offer presentation date. Uh, a week and a half can change the market. And I feel like it's perfect if you list the house on a Wednesday evening, right? You're in the market Thursday, Friday, nothing big changes. Saturday, Sunday happens. By Monday, you have your offer presentation. There's enough people that will go by. It's the perfect timing because by the time it's uploaded on realtor.ca and all the other freebie websites are pulling up the information and people start looking at your property, weekend hits, people can get out, see the house on the weekends. Your sellers are not, or if it's a tenanted property, they're not out of whack because they have to be out of the house for a week and a half. They get tired, right? There are people
Right.
coming in and this is happening, and people
Right.
usually have small children, and it's great. And I advise always get an Airbnb and go for a little, time out for yourself. You set up the house beautifully, leave the house, and it's easy to do, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you vacate the house, and by Monday you have your offer presentation. With this, the way the market is, if you've not played too many games and you've not listed the property like $500,000 less than what you're asking, wanting, people are not stupid. They look at the property, they look at the comparables, and they're gonna say, we don't want to even play this game anymore. We're done
Right.
with this,
Yeah.
right? We're not gonna stand up in a lineup with 30 people. We'll never make it. So you will take off all the tire kickers, you'll take off all of that frustration from the buyer side, and then if you create a position like this, I think you still will be able to sell that property for about 10% higher than listing. But it's a very
But
clean, honest,
yeah, but
clear-cut
you're
way to
talking
do
about a
it.
listing price that's a real market price,
Real
not
market price.
right. No, and I never really understood the strategy of listing properties way below fair market value just to entice offers because you're attracting people to it that really can't afford that property.
For
And then you're
sure.
getting a bid up, and just so you can have an advertisement afterward that sold for $300,000 over asking, or the
Yeah.
listing, like it was a stupid price. Like, who are you fooling? Like,
Yeah.
you're not a genius real estate agent by doing that. Like I never really understood that strategy. And you don't want to make potential buyers feel that they're overpaying for a property by $300,000 either. Like, people want to pay a
Absolutely.
fair market price.
Yeah, yeah. This stress that you create in other people is and it's unnecessary stress for you. Now you're gonna have 15 offers to deal with where
Right.
at least 10 of them are not even worth looking at,
Yeah, because
right?
they've maxed out.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, they maxed out and with whatever offer they were buying, because you listed it for 800,000, knowing that it's worth $1,000,001. So people that were in the market that could actually afford an $800,000 house are saying, "Oh, if I can get that for 800,000, I love that place," but they got no
mhm,
chance. And they're putting, and they've already got all their nickels together to make that offer at 800, or they stretch to 850, but they can't come up to $1,000,001. So why as an agent do you want to read 10 offers that
yeah,
with people that can't possibly, get up to really be competitive in there? So I don't
right.
really understand that strategy.
Mm. And just prolonged delayed offer presentation dates. So much can happen, right? Another house on the street can come on the market. Somebody can be like you're just like unnecessary greed. And I keep talking about, because marketing is my background, and I keep talking about knowing your target audience, knowing your demographic. When you're listing your house, you're actually putting a product on the market to sell, right?
Right.
If you're not pricing it properly, right, in the hopes that you're going to get so much more traffic, i- it's not worthwhile. Like, you don't seem like a professional, not in the eyes of the sellers. There's no need for 50 people to go through your seller's house,
Right.
right? There's wear and tear, there's people coming in, people's kids coming in. It's not necessary. You need to have, and I always tell, especially through COVID, so I always tell my realtors, you only need you know 10 showings, 10 showings of serious buyers. The price is clearly outlined. You do the best presentation of the property. It's nice, it's clean, it's done up properly. We just talked about how chattels and fixtures and everything is in good working order. Everything has been fixed, and you present your house properly at the right price, market price. And you find you don't want to have an offer the first day. You want to be able to show it to people. So you list it on Thursday, you put it up on Monday for offer presentation, and that's how I would do it if if I was listing a property. Um,
And that's
in,
why you're successful, and the agents that do it that way are successful, because you bring a level of professionalism
Mhm,
to the seller, and then they have to trust you. They have to trust you as a professional, that you're giving them the straight goods. You're going to sell their property either way, right? But you want them to follow your lead and your guidance, saying, this is how much your property is really worth. Okay,
mhm,
this is fair
mhm,
market value. If you get this for your property, you've done really well. Now,
mhm.
having said that, because of there's opportunities right now, we might be able to do better than that because of market conditions. But if we don't,
Jeez.
this is what it's really worth. So if you get that, you should be really happy with that. If we can implement this strategy and maybe we get lucky, we get a couple of multi offers and it pushes it up, then you get a bit of a windfall. So that would be great. So we're going to try for that, but you have to manage their expectations. At the price, it's
Mhm,
worth $1,000,000, but you might
mhm.
end up getting $1,050,000. You might get $1,000,001,
Exactly,
but it's really
exactly.
worth $1,000,000. So you're
Mhm.
managing their expectations. They're trusting you that you've done your homework. You're a professional. You know what the real value
Yeah.
is. You know
There's
you have
no
your
stress, it's very stable for everybody. Your colleague, or your the realtors, that's, I always look at the other side as my colleagues. You're working together to make a deal happen. You're
Mhm.
deal makers. You're both working in the best interest of the buyer and seller, because you have to think about other things that are going to follow. Mortgages are going to follow, right?
Right.
You If you get this out of hand and out of control, and 5 days before closing you realize that the buyer is not getting a mortgage approval, and the market has shifted, you actually hurt your client way worse, because now they've bought a property and they can't close this property. There's
Right.
so many, for me, I love professionalism. I want everything done clean, cut, clear, and that reflects on all parties. It keeps us secure. It's your job to keep everybody secure.
Right.
You asked me
And that's an
about
important point, Sabiha, because
mm,
lenders are lending not based on the sale price or the purchase price. They're lending based on an appraisal. So regardless of what someone paid and it's under contract, because a strong argument, oh, that's the fair market. You have to pay $1.2 million to get that, then that's a good indication that's what it's worth right now in the current market conditions, right?
mm,
But they're still going to do an appraisal, and they're going to say, yeah, but for the bidding war, this property is really worth $1 million. So we're only going to lend you based on a value of $1 million, because if you, yeah, you're going to pay $1.2 million to buy it right now, but if the market completely collapses 3 months from now, this property's not going to be worth more than $1 million if we have to sell it, right?
yeah,
So you always have to be mindful of that, and because you're right, you got to get a buyer at a right price where they can get their financing based on what the real value of the property is, not what they're paying for the property.
absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I remember even 2017, banks were so smart. If you had a 2 or 3 month closing, they would actually send the appraiser a week, 2 weeks before, because there was so much change and shift. You asked me about what I advise realtors, you know, when if they're not busy and what to do.
Yeah,
So for me, it's always number one is you stay true to yourself, so you get the clients that are in sync with who you are, right? I'm very, very big on what your unique selling proposition is as a realtor. You have to understand that it's a service that you're in, right? You're not selling homes, because if I'm selling homes and five other people are selling homes, we're up against each other, right? There's I think 56,000 realtors out there at this point in the GTA. The key is that we are all unique. The key is that we're also in the service to sell a product which is an essential. It's shelter, right? So there is enough business for everybody if they stay true to themselves and stay within their interests and not give up. You know, if you're not busy today, you need to work on your pipeline of where you're going to get business. And you can get business from literally everywhere, because everybody needs a home. Everybody needs a residence, whether it's lease or it's you know, or somebody's running a business. So there's all everybody that you meet will is a potential client, right? So keeping that, you know, understanding, staying on top of it, educating yourself, keep re-educating yourself, keep finding out what the market is doing, keep yourself abreast with you know, whatever the changes are, right? Is there a new tax? Last time we chatted, you talked about you know, the investors tax being increased. We know
right.
about what's happening to interest rates. So staying within the network as well, and having conversations with professionals that actually are part of the network, you know, which affect your market. And that's when you're going to set yourself apart, is if you're educated and you're understanding all that's happening, then you know the trends. You can kind of foresee what's going to happen before it happens, because all of these little things, you know, put together, we have only, I think, 5% are international investors in our market, and that's more downtown core, but it always does
Right.
affect suburbia as well.
Right. But those 5% gets a lot of noise and a lot of attention, but
Of
it's really,
course.
it's only 5%. Like, it's a small part of the market, and they're not doing that much damage to the rest of the market because it's not that many transactions that they're involved in, you know, and they've got their own issues to deal with the, you know, with NRST and the things like that, making it unaffordable. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you don't focus on that. And I think one thing you mentioned is you talked about trends, using the word trends. And that's what I remind people about all the time in our industry, that real estate is cyclical. Residential real estate is cyclical. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if there's COVID, a pandemic, no pandemic, any year, a hot market, not a hot market. And GTA, an argument made that we've been in this hot market for years and years and years already. But even within that hot market, year over year, there's still cycles. And every year when we get to December, January, February, things are quieter. So I always say, don't get discouraged, because we just happen to be in those winter months, and every year it's quieter, and every year, regardless of market conditions, regardless of inflation, regardless of everything else going on in the world, things do pick up when we get into the spring. And March is busier than February, and April's busier than March, and May's busier than April. And you can look it up year after year after year. It's just what happens in our market. So I'm always saying, don't get discouraged when you're sitting around in December and January and you got nothing, you don't have buyers and you don't have any listings. Like, it's keep planting your seeds, keep working your people, and because eventually people are going to move and people are going to want to move and they're going to come to you.
David, when in December, when holidays happen, doesn't matter whether you celebrate Christmas or not, it's the holiday season.
Mhm.
It's too cold outside. People are throwing parties. People are going into people's houses. They're looking at kitchens. They're looking at living rooms. That's when people start thinking about, oh, my house is not looking this way.
Right.
And that stress starts in November. So I always do this myself, and I always tell my realtors, don't wait till December to send your Christmas cards, right? Send your Christmas cards in November.
Yeah.
And so when people start thinking about entertainment, about families coming over, about going out to friends' homes, about friends coming over to the house, and they start thinking about, maybe I want to move to something bigger. That's when people buy dining tables and couches and sofas and curtains, and that's when people start really thinking about their homes. And it takes roughly about 3 months for a person to have the initial thought, right? And then start getting into, and even for investors, if I start thinking in investments by being in other people's homes and in places, and then I think, oh, maybe that I can buy something in Liberty Village, or that encourages you. So it's also really good, like what you said, is that you actually start working in that quiet time on your clients to be able to be in the market very active in spring, because it'll take
Right.
about 3 months for it to take action. And another realtor who's invited them over and had a big party in their house is going to get them as clients, and you'll lose them.
Right. So you always got to be working on it,
Yeah.
because it's going to, you got to keep planting the seeds. You got to be farming your territories, whether you're doing it physically or you're doing it online, or however you're doing it, staying in touch with people. That's time to be active, working on your systems, working on your marketing materials, things like that. You use that downtime. We do the same thing. Like, our firm is cyclical too on the residential real estate side, I think, for the same reason. We're generally quieter in those months, and then we get busier as we get into spring. So we try and make good use of the time in December, January, February to make sure we catch up on all our reporting. We make sure we're looking at our systems. We're hiring new people and training people to get them ready. So when we get to the busier spring, summer months, we have capacity to handle what we hope is going to come in. But I can tell you, year after year, there's a certain point at sometime in January when I'm sitting around looking at the numbers and I'm going, oh my God, like, we got all this overhead, we got all this thing, there aren't that many files. Like, what if it doesn't pick up in the spring? And, and every year we go through that same thought process in a firm like ours. But sure enough, every year we do have a spring and the market improves,
Yeah.
regardless. And it's always better in April and May than it was in January and February. And this year's going to be no different. So we just have to remind ourselves of that, not be discouraged, and know that we're building something in these winter months. We're not hibernating and doing nothing. We're putting systems into place. We're improving ourselves, getting ready, because the market will improve. There will be more activity. So if you're an
Absolutely.
agent, if you're a lawyer, same thing. You got to be ready.
Yeah.
Because it's good. It's coming.
Yeah, and your spring will be so much more. It'll blossom so much better if you've actually been really active through the quiet time. And especially for realtors, David, we're one man band. It's very hard for us to take care of our CRMs and take care of any kind of lead generation or anything when we're very busy with actually a deal. So your
Right.
time is actually, when you're quieter, you should be building on your business to be able to stay busy for the whole rest of the year.
Right. So, that's important. And I think at your place, your firm, provides that kind of support, that kind of advice, and those kind of systems to your agents, and you encourage people. This is the time of year you take advantage of attending, webinars and seminars, whether it's in person or online or whatever it is, but do that and look at how you're marketing things. And you're a tremendous resource for your agents to contact them. Nobody knows marketing better than you about all kinds of businesses, and how you use that experience to say, okay, how do we market our brokerage? How do we help each agent market their own private business? Because each one is a business on their own, but you're part of their support system.
Yeah,
so they got to take advantage of the fact that you're a resource. David's a resource. You've got systems, you've got things to look to.
Yeah, and we bring in so many other people, how to use Canva, how to use Instagram, how to use, and I mean, these things keep changing and keep growing, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I remember my thesis document that I prepared. It was, my computer was so big, like, it had that monitor which was like way wide in the back. And, my first job at YNR, my cell phone, I had to actually buy a big purse for my cell phone. My cell phone was actually this thick thing where the antenna used to screw in and
You
screw
have to
out.
screw it in. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so I mean, and look at us now.
Right. Because you had to be accessible. You had to be able to respond quickly, and right. And nothing's changed. There's just different ways. Look, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago, do you think you'd be doing a podcast on a weekly basis to help spread the word and talk about things in the real estate industry? Like no chance. First of all, I would say, what's a podcast? But you have to evolve. There's always something new. There's always a different way to get through to people, to reach people. We're constantly looking for the next thing, not just getting used to what's worked in the past. We're looking for what's the next thing. How are we going to continue? People are looking for lawyers in a completely different way they are right now than they were 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Even 5 years ago. Like, it's different. When I started practicing, you needed a lawyer. You asked your friends, your parents, your relatives, do you have a lawyer? Can you refer someone to me? Or you have a real estate agent, you ask your agent for referral. Now it's different. There's different ways. People, they still do some of that, but they're looking you up online. They're looking for they're Googling you. They're looking to see your social media presence.
For sure. When COVID hit, the first thing when we closed the brokerage was I spent a day or 2 days calling up my sisters and perfecting myself on Zoom, because my whole key was that realtors shouldn't feel that they're without us, that the brokerage is not there to support them.
Right.
And I mean, we've had such success in our Zoom trainings. I've added so many different aspects to it. We do this open mic session with realtors, accomplished realtors that talk about their business stance. And this is not just external, right? I bring in our realtors to talk about it. And it's just a very candid conversation about how you built your business, what exactly do you do. And it just, I feel that keeps the networking feeling that Sutton Summit used to always have, where you could come in and you could talk to a senior realtor. I mean, I remember when I joined, Brian McGuire had set me up with Rosa Ferguson. She's retired now. And I learned so much from her. I used to really look forward to my session with her. And, she used to tell me how she built her business. And there was Gord Daly and all of these people.
That's who I was just thinking of. I remember, walking into those many times, and if Gord Daly was there was a crowd around him, and he was holding court, and everybody's picking his brain, and he's handing everybody a pen. Here's a pen. You want a pen? Here's a pin. Here's a pen. Here's a something. Always had something to give out. And he just came across with class, and he was a professional, but he had time for the younger agents. And I don't mean younger in age, but newer agents in experience, because not every agent, decides to join when they're young. I know some people joined, midlife and became incredibly good agents. And it's interesting to see that now some of those are now the top agents, and they're offering that to the younger and newer right?
I'm the mentor now. I
Right.
had Vince come in. He used to be manage our brokerage when I started 11 years ago, and
Yeah.
my contract was signed with Vince.
Yeah.
And then Vince kind of left. He was semi-retired and he's come back into the business. And when he came back, I was the one who signed. So his contract is signed by me. So it's a
Yeah.
full circle,
Yeah.
And
That's
he was
funny, eh?
yesterday and we were talking about this. And I mean, he used to be there at 11 o'clock at night. You're
Vince was
putting an
always
offer,
there.
was there.
Vince was always there for everybody else, always ready to, to help everybody.
Hmm.
And that's important in a brokerage. Like, it's really important. That's when I'm glad you found a way to do that, even though people, don't show up and hang around the office like they used to, right?
Yeah.
Because of COVID and everything. But so you found other means of getting people together and still having that influence. Because an agent can learn so much more from another agent who's willing to tell their story. That's all they got to do is tell
Yes.
their story. And the successful agents have all done things a little bit differently. They have certain things that are common, and that comes with, they all work really damn hard. And I think that's the
Mhm.
first point that has to come across. In their own way, they're
Oh,
working hard,
absolutely. Oh, yeah, for
by
sure.
spending the time and the effort, and that's why they're successful. But aside from that, they all have a little bit a different technique and different way of getting in touch with their clients and finding new clients. That's invaluable. So the fact you
Mm.
find a way to get them in touch with the younger agents is tremendous.
Yeah, I mean it motivates, even when I'm sitting with these realtors and I'm having a conversation, it motivates me, it excites me, it gives me an idea. And that's the whole thing, right? It's such a lonely business. In your own, you're getting burnt out, you're getting
Right.
frustrated, and when you hear somebody else's story and when you see other people are going through this too and how are they, kind of dealing with it, it makes you feel like, oh, I'm not alone in the trenches, you
Right.
know?
Right. And there's always hope, because there's always somebody that's busier than you are, or getting more action. And sometimes
Hmm.
they're just getting lucky. Sometimes it's through their efforts, but it's good to know that there is opportunities out there, and you got to keep pushing and don't get discouraged, because everybody
Absolutely.
goes through that. You got to keep finding new ways, pick people's brains, use the resources. And that's what you guys do a tremendous job with your support system. And I hope that everybody takes advantage of it, because they should be.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Yep. Um, I had a few more points, but I'm not sure how we are on time. Maybe we
Yeah.
can pick that up on another session or,
Well, that's the beauty of this, because we can always do another session. And it's always
of
a pleasure
course.
to have you on. And we'll have you on again soon, whether David's on or not, or whether I'm on or not. You're still going to be on, and we'll raise some of these other issues, because I know we had a few things we wanted to get to today. But
There's always more where when I see, oh, I have a moment with David, there's always many questions I have.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's always great talking with you, and for me to pick your brain and see what you're doing and your ideas, because you really understand the real estate market and how a brokerage has to operate, and how a brokerage has to communicate with the lawyers that they deal with, like me and the other lawyers in our office. So it's always great to touch base with you, Sabiha, and I'm really happy that you're able to be here today. And we'll just book the next one and get you on again very shortly.
Sounds great, David. Thank you.
Okay, and everybody stay safe out there, and I hope David Gorski's having a great week. We miss him. We'll get him back for the next one probably, but he couldn't send anybody better than Sabiha to be with us today. So hope everybody enjoyed this, and stay safe, and we'll see you at the next podcast.
All right. Bye now.
Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market and dive deep to understand the issues affecting buyers, sellers, investors, and businesses. If you love real estate as much as we do, sit back, relax, and gain an insider's edge to the exciting world of real estate. David Gorski is a broker and the owner of Sutton Summit Realty, a powerhouse brokerage providing guidance to over 180 realtors. And David Korman is a partner at Kormans LLP, a respected law firm specializing in residential and commercial real estate transactions, with offices located in Toronto, Mississauga, and Markham.